Today's talk is titled Distinguishing Between What is Important, Not So Important, and What is Trivial. And I am going to start out right off the bat by showing this book. I am going to use a number of quotes from this book. It's called The Future Is Now, and it's by Gyalwang Karmapa. And the subtitle is Timely Advice for Creating a Better World. So to begin the talk, here is a quote of his, and it is titled, Lighten Up. Who knows what you will see, hear, or experience in these chaotic and turbulent times? Try to protect yourself from becoming too overwhelmed by pain and suffering. Lighten up. Don't take things so seriously. With a broad and accommodating mind, you can keep a sense of perspective. So that is my introduction to this talk, is that we need to maintain a broad and accommodating mind to what we experience in our lives so that we can have a sense of perspective. And to go into that sense of perspective a little bit more deeply, this is something that I have noticed over and over and over again, and that is that I can tell different people the same thing, and they will all react differently. Sometimes just minor differences, and sometimes completely differently. And what I mean by that is that one person will say, that's wonderful, that's just very, very good, it's excellent. And another person will say, well, there have been lots of problems, yada, 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 and this could be really problematical. And so it's good for us to, you might say, take a time out from time to time and look within and realize that we are always projecting things onto our experience and onto other people. You might say, be a little bit skeptical of what enters our mind. So to go on here, we have activity that is interacting with other people and our environment. And we have activity that is internal. And it's always good to ask ourselves this question: what am I trying to accomplish right now? What am I trying to do? What is my goal? Frequently, we don't really know. That I like to use the example of a car, that we put our car on cruise control and we just let the speed be, you might say, out of our control. You could say it's a good comparison with habitual patterns. And so it is common that we go through our daily lives and we're on cruise control. We're not really paying attention. We're not really aware of what we are wanting to accomplish right now, and especially what is our long-term goal. There's a very important term in Buddhism, which is mindfulness. And this cuts through this habitual pattern of just keeping repeating day after day the same sorts of things. And what mindfulness means is that you are paying attention to what is going on outside of you, and especially you pay attention to what's going on inside of you. And with practice, you become more aware of your biases, your psychological and habitual biases, and you start being able to see beyond them. So in looking at our activities and what we're doing, then it's excellent to have mindfulness. And it's also important to, of course, steering yourself towards doing what is beneficial. And here is another quote from Gyalwang Karmapa. To determine what is beneficial or harmful, consider the long-term effects and not just the partial or immediate results. Investigate the context thoroughly and do not be fooled by appearances. I think we can all relate to having experiences that in retrospect, we have said something to the effect of, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. So it's important to see when you are doing activity, when the activity is all over with, how does it make you feel? What's going on the inside? Do you feel better? Do you feel worse? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel content, relaxed? Do this examination and investigation and see how what you just experienced, what you did, and so forth is making you feel. Yet, Karmapa also talks about modern conveniences, and this is a very important point. And we all, of course, like modern conveniences. A day like today, I really like having a house that is heated. It's very nice to be inside a warm house rather than being outside, because not only is it cold, but it's a windy day here. So his quote is, even though amenities are meant to make life easier and more comfortable, watch out. Rely on them too much without setting limits, and suffering soon follows. So we have to be aware of the fact that modern conveniences, amenities, and so on and so forth are not as important as we tend to think they are, or at least the society that we live in think they are. And I would say from my experience over in Asia that they too like modern conveniences, and there's a reason why much of the world wants to move to the United States, to immigrate to the United States, is because they somehow or another feel that if you come to the United States and become rich and wealthy, you no longer have problems. And so it's important to realize that no, it actually can make things more difficult for us having all these amenities because, among other things, due to impermanence, they break down and need repair. And just as an example, we can do things so much more quickly, so much easier as a result of the digital age, cell phones in particular. Yet when we go with them to a place that is out of range of a tower, it's a big problem. Or if for some reason or another, it doesn't work properly and locks up, and on and on and on. An experience that I've had recently, and this is not the only time, I've had it a lot of times, where I am on the phone with, in this case, it was setting up an appointment. And the person on the other side became very apologetic because her computer was slow. And it's like, okay, I don't mind waiting. Is it not a problem for me? But we get so used to things being easy and comfortable that when the slightest discomfort arises, it's a huge problem. When you're in India, you quickly realize that there is a saying, a very short saying, but you hear it all the time, and it is no problem. And so one of the first times I heard it, I flew into Delhi. And when I got there, my checked bag was lost. Now they say mishandled. And my carry-on was mishandled. There's a long story how this can happen with your carry-on, and it happened to me. And it wasn't that I misplaced it. It was the airlines that was the cause of this problem. So I went to the desk of the person in charge of lost baggage and told him, and he said, no problem, and then explained what I would have to do to get it. And so having a solution was the same as having no problem to him. And I really think that this is a good way to look at life, that my life at least, and I'm expecting your lives are the same way. It has been one thing after another, after another, after another that doesn't go according to plan. And you could say that life is just solving one problem after another, or if you want to look at it a different way, you can say one opportunity after another, after another. I Googled Thomas Edison quotes before I came on with this talk, and You might say that the did he actually say this is debatable, but he said something like this when asked, because he was a known inventor before he invented the light bulb. And he was asked by somebody, how does it feel to be a failure? Because he hadn't invented the light bulb yet by this time. And actually, what he hadn't invented was a light bulb that was durable, that lasted more than an hour or two or three. And his answer was something like, I know 1,300 ways not to make a light bulb. And it's been very helpful. And he did, of course, eventually invent the light bulb that was durable. So the point is that our lives are going to be full of problems or opportunities. And the question is, are they important or are they not so important? Or are they actually trivial? So this is really important, because the more importance we place on these problems, the more we suffer. And here is another quote that's kind of going off in a different direction, but I think it's an important point to make. And this is a quote again from Karmapa, and it's on wealth. Wealth can be a source of both happiness and misery. To accumulate wealth is fine, so long as you know how to use it properly. And that emphasis is mine, that what frequently happens is that the money is using us, you could say, that our attachment to money is controlling us rather than us controlling the money. I am reminded frequently of my grandmother, who was born in 1896 into a farm family in Wisconsin. And she talked very fondly of her childhood. And this was a childhood where I don't know the exact house that she grew up in, but the house that I live in was built right around that time. And her house may not have been a new house even. But a day like today reminds me of this house, and that is, even though I have done a lot to, you might say, upgrade its energy efficiency, and with a strong east wind like today, I can tell which direction the wind blows without going outside or looking at a weather report, because it's the rooms on the east side of the house are the cold ones. And when this house was built, it was much colder. The windows were very, shall we say, drafty, with no weather stripping, no insulation in the house. The house was built so that the rooms downstairs had their own access to a chimney, so you could have a wood stove in any of the downstairs rooms for warmth. And years ago, when there were people from that generation still alive, I would hear stories out here about people waking up in the morning when in these kinds of houses, and they would have a bowl and pitcher there for washing. There were no indoor bathrooms or plumbing at this time, and the water in the pitcher was frozen, and this was their bedroom. And Grandma talked lovingly about this. She had no internet, no electricity. I have no doubt they had a crank wall phone. But basically, that was the modern convenience that they had, and it wasn't a problem for her. And nowadays, when little things go wrong, for us, it's a big thing, or can be a big thing. That's maybe a better way to put that. So it's really important that we understand that we have the ability to relate more wisely to what's going on in our outer environment. And so that brings up the topic of the friends that we have, the people that we work with, family and family relationships, and so forth. And some families are very warm and loving and kind and uplifting. But my experience, both personal experience and also in talking with other people, is that this is an ideal that is seldom realized, that you're always going to be having difficulties and problems in families, that parents frequently have, you might say, favorite children. Now, when I was much younger, the Smothers Brothers had a television program, and that was one of the ongoing jokes, which was, Mom loved you better than me. And that happens. We get treated differently. And when you get an extended family, it gets even more, what would I say, out of control, I think is a good way to put it. That you have some that are really neurotic and difficult to be with and even can cause pain when you're around them. And others where you feel comfortable and protected and so forth, both as a child and as an adult. But these can be difficult. And as we become adults, and especially as we practice, because this is what practice is all about, is we start seeing difficult people differently and start seeing them more with compassion. And we have more, you could say, tools in our toolbox. We've got mind training, we've got mindfulness, and so forth, that we can work with these relationships. As bodhisattvas, if that's the path we're on, we are to be motivated to benefit others. But it's always important, even if you've taken bodhisattva vows, to look inside and decide, when I'm with this person or this group, does it uplift me or does it bring me down? Am I able to uplift them rather than them bringing me down? And if the case is that it brings you down and you're not able to help them, then it's best to avoid people like that. And again, to realize this is what the goal is, but I'm not able to do this at this time. And this again goes back to mindfulness. So another aspect of mindfulness is being careful of what we uh, put into our mind, what kind of what we read, what we watch, what we think about, and so forth. And of course, the ultimate goal is for us to attain liberation. And we want to keep that in mind, in the back, you might say the back of our mind, when we are engaging in activities. Karmapa says hobbies are good, that recreation is good. In fact, let's see here. I think I have a good quote on his on hobbies. Yeah, here is a quote of his on hobbies. The more you learn, the more you are able to solve problems and deal with difficult situations. Alongside your main area of focus, why not also study something else just for the fun of it? And that's an incredibly important point because, as he says here, the more we are able to solve problems and deal with difficult situations, because we all have these constantly. And what I have found from my own personal experience goes along with this teaching of Karmapa 100%, that as I learn in, let's just say, woodworking, how to work with difficulties that arise, mistakes, errors, on and on and on, that there's a carryover to the rest of my life, that they're not different boxes. And so hobbies can be good, can be helpful, as long as you keep them in perspective and don't let them take over your life. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was once asked a question about TV. And this was a long, long time ago. And it was something to the effect of, is it appropriate for me to watch TV? And Rinpoche said, well, it's simple. If it's a good program, turn it on. If it's a bad program, turn it off. And if it's boxing, copy it and give me the copy. Because Rinpoche was known to like boxing. I never heard him explain why he liked boxing, but he definitely liked to watch a boxing fight. And a lot of us students of his were left, you might say, scratching our heads because it just didn't seem to fit with this very gentle bodhisattva. But anyway, according to him, even was fine to watch boxing. But if you're spending all your time in front of a screen, now this is a problem because you're making it much too important. So we need to know how to, you might say, navigate the world of samsara. And what I actually recommend, and this is based on my own experience and also based on teachings that I have received and things that I have read in Buddhism, and that is that sometimes it's good to go on, you could say, a fast of what you put into your mind. And be careful, be mindful of what you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're talking about with other people. Pay attention to how you feel after watching a movie, reading a book, listening to a song, and so forth. I'm having a problem with a squirrel wanting to live in this outbuilding right next to the house. Those of you that have been here, it's the one that is connected by the deck. And I have tried putting screening, heavy screening over holes, and been partially successful, but he keeps finding other ways to get in. And presently, my solution is, until I can get out there and find the holes and put more screening up, is to have a radio tuned very loudly to a rock and roll station. And I haven't listened, at least for any length of time, to a rock and roll station music or whatever. But even though it's new music, it's like it's the same old, same old. And I haven't even been listening to the words. But personally, I don't like the way it makes me feel. And I'm not trying to make the squirrel feel bad. I'm just trying to make him so uncomfortable that he won't want to go and sleep there and spend the night there and hang out there. Again, I'm not sure if it's a permanent solution, and I'm going to do, you might say, a more physical solution to it with screening. But really, it's important what we put into our minds and to be selective. If you tend to see things negatively, the last thing you want to do is put negative things into your mind. It just, what I found when I first came to Buddhism, suffering from depression, was that I wanted to put negative things in my mind because it kind of confirmed how I was feeling. But do you really want to confirm your depression, your negative feelings and attitudes and outlook and so forth? The Karmapa has said in other places that he leans towards being positive, even if it's slightly unrealistic. So anyway, it is important to be mindful of our thoughts, our motivation, our conflicting emotions. And just realize that life is going to be difficult. And one of the reasons why we are practicing Buddhist is that we want to get out rather than just want to be more comfortable. And so keep your mind focused on working towards getting out, if not in this lifetime, in future lifetimes. And this is why we say this short prayer at the end of the Mahamudra supplication, which states briefly that in all my lifetimes, may I never be separated from the perfect Guru and traverse the paths and bhumis and attain the state of Vajradhara, which in Vajrayana is the same as the state of Buddhahood. It's just a different way of expressing that. So these are important points. The last point that I want to make is that every moment is a new beginning. And it is every moment where there is freedom. You cannot change the past. The future hasn't happened yet. But in the present, the past has died. The future hasn't happened. And this is where freedom to go in a new direction is, to try something new and so forth. That the present moment is full of possibilities, new possibilities. If we are on cruise control, there aren't any new possibilities. It's just more of the same old, same old. That every moment there's a chance to, you might say, examine and then go in a new, better direction. It's even been said that if you are having difficulties and you find that you keep doing the same thing over and over again with this particular difficult situation, do anything new, just do something different, anything to help break that habitual pattern. So when you are going through your day, I feel that it's very important to stop every now and then and look within and see, where is your mind right now? What is, you might say, the contents at this point? Is what I am thinking about important? Or is it unimportant? Or is it trivial? Have I been thinking about some problem that may arise and worrying about it over and over and over again? I like to describe worrying as being very similar to planning on things going bad. It hasn't happened yet. It may happen. It may not happen. But there you are, holding on to this all day long, like it is the most important thing out there in your whole life, that there's nothing else going on. Or any time that we are unhappy, if we really stop and look within, most likely we're going to be finding, besides worry, fear, perhaps anger, jealousy, attachment, greed, pride, the whole 9 yards, so to speak, all different kinds of kleshas. And it's a very simple solution, and that is to replace the thought or the thoughts with thoughts of kindness, with thoughts of patience or forgiveness, tolerance, with thoughts of love. And this could be thoughts that you're having about yourself. It could be thoughts you're having about other people. But if you can realize that when you are unhappy, when you are negative, that this is a bit like the maintenance required light on your car. And there's some mental maintenance that needs to be done, and it is let go of the thoughts that are keeping you unhappy and replace them with these thoughts of patience, kindness, compassion, and so forth. And if you remain mindful, at least every once in a while, when the old thoughts come back, again, replace them and realize that these thoughts really aren't that important. I don't have to be holding on to them.